Hey there, welcome to Film in the Blank. My name's Ian, I watch a lot of movies. Here's everything I watched this month. I started the month off with 1954's Seven Samurai, written by Akira Kurosawa, Shinobu Hashimoto, and Hideo Oguni, and directed by Akira Kurosawa. My fiancé wanted to start the month off with a proper film, so I picked this masterpiece, and an hour in I asked him how he was liking it, and he said, and I quote, "Why does everybody look like they bout to bathroom?" Needless to say, the wedding is off, and I am immensely sorry to the entire Akira Kurosawa estate. There are a few Kurosawas I have a stronger connection with, but that in no way lessens how magnificent of a cinematic achievement this beast is. 5 stars. Next, a film I had some moderately high hopes for, Companion, written and directed by Drew Hancock. This is a classic case of a competently made film being undone with overly revealing marketing. The first act builds to a reveal that would be satisfying if everything from the trailer to the goddamn movie poster didn't spoil it first. That sucked a lot of the fun out of this and let me get way ahead of all the other twists and turns and left me pretty bored waiting for everything to play out like I assumed it would. Sophie Thatcher is a fantastic lead who carries a lot of the film on her back, particularly over another weak performance from Jack Quaid. After Yellow Jackets, Heretic, and now Companion, Sophie's quickly making a name for herself and I'm here for it. 3 stars. Then a film drunk guys in Boston have been screaming about for decades, Queer, written by Justin Kuritzkis and directed by Luca Guadagnino. Challengers is the 2024 collab from Luca Guadagnino, Justin Kuritzkis, and Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross that really smashed it for me, but this had its moments. Daniel Craig finally got to show off more of his nuanced range, and I even liked Drew Starkey for the most part. It's the pacing and narrative that dampened a lot of the film's vitality for me though. The big standout is the dreamy mix of miniatures, fantastical pastel backdrops, and starkly eye-catching production design that bring the soapy world of the film to life. I'd love for Queer to have gotten more below-the-line awards attention, but the strange finished product erased any chance of that. 3.5 stars. Then some essential 90s viewing, 1999's Jawbreaker, written and directed by Darren Stein. Somehow this slipped through my cracks growing up in the 90s, but damn if it isn't a certified gem with some of the greatest comedic dialogue of the last 40 years. From genius lines like, "Never send a rose unless dyed black as a warning," to meta beauties like, "I don't believe we've met, what with the cruel politics of high school and all." The script is a gift to character for the cast and also helps cover up the weaker plot. 4 stars. Then the subtly titled 1935's Captain Blood, written by Casey Robinson and directed by Michael Curtiz. This is a true heater of a directorial effort from Michael Curtiz that emphasizes the grand scale and lavish environments of pirate life in the Caribbean. Curtiz also keeps the tone on track throughout, mixing in a little courtroom thriller, a little goofy adventure, and a whole lot of swashbuckling bravado. He's even able to paper over some cringy repartee about slavery that's meant to be flirty? That's a choice. 4 stars. Then Nosa Senora, it's I'm Still Here, written by Murilo Hauser and Heitor Larrega and directed by Walter Salas. I love surprises on Oscar nomination morning, and my favorite has got to be smaller gems that sneak their way into Best Picture. Think Winter's Bone in 2010, Beast of the Southern Wild in 2012, and now I'm Still Here, which tells the story of Eunice Paiva, a lawyer turned human rights advocate who was unjustly imprisoned and ruthlessly interrogated by Brazil's dictatorial government in the early 1970s. When her husband Rubens is taken by the government and never seen again, she becomes one of the leading voices speaking out against the human rights violations going on in her country. Fernanda Torres earned every iota of that Oscar nom, but I was most impressed by how fleshed out each member of the central family was and how effectively the story is rooted in their experiences. It's fantastic, thorough screenwriting that breathes life into a family all going through crisis in their own way. 4.5 stars. Next, it's Almost Murder Backwards, Red Rooms, written and directed by Pascal Plante. Red Rooms is a truly galling psychological thriller masquerading as a true crime courtroom drama that follows a model-turned-hacker who has an unhealthy obsession with the ongoing trial of a man accused of killing young girls and uploading their snuff tapes to the dark web. It's a marathon of unsettling moments, many of which it's hard to put a finger on as to what is so unsettling, but nothing unsettled me more than those teensy bits of handheld camera work that would slink into scenes and send a chill down my spine. Canada's really letting its freak flag fly this month. 4 stars. Next, 1963's Winter Light, written and directed by Ingmar Bergman. Of the 7 or 8 Bergman films I've seen so far, not sure why the one that I've connected to the most is this reserved look at faith and death that's bleak even by Bergman standards. It's nihilistic and quick to acknowledge the futility of anything well-intentioned or aimed at bettering the world around you. Maybe that kind of brutal honesty is what transfixed me more than any other film this month, and also somehow actually makes me feel hopeful, because I don't feel like life is that categorically doomed, and watching a film amplifying that belief makes me more sure that there is hope, if that makes sense. The unimposing cinematography gives Gunnar Bjornstrand room to slowly devolve as a priest, continuously failing himself, everyone around him, and in his mind, even God. I haven't been able to stop thinking about it since I watched it, and it's gonna be challenging for another Bergman film to top it. 5 stars. Then grab your cheese, it's Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Fowl, written by Mark Burton and directed by Nick Park and Merlin Crossingham. Wallace and Gromit are back and charming as always, with a stellar last act that really pushes the physics and boldness of the kind of stop-motion animation Aardman is known for. I also think this had the most genuine laughs of a Wallace and Gromit film, which is a noteworthy feat for a 30-year-old franchise. 4 stars. Next, I sunk beneath the waters of 1955's Diabolique, written by Henri-Georges Clouzot and Jérôme Geronimi, and directed by Henri-Georges Clouzot. I've heard nothing but rave reviews of this for years, and now I know why. Diabolique draws you in with its pulpy trappings and the prickly chemistry between its two leads, a sickly sweet Vera Clouzot and an ice-cold Simone Signoret. The further these two amble down the path of their homegrown murder plot, the more the path starts to bend and distort beneath their feet. Henri-Georges Clouzot smothers you with silence for much of the film, building the tension and mystery until that surprisingly scary ending. Truly masterful. 4.5 stars. Next, a newly Oscar-nominated doc, Porcelain War, directed by Brendan Belomo and Slava Leontiev. This was probably the runner-up to No Other Land for the documentary Oscar this year, with both films fighting for oxygen for their respective humanitarian crises. Porcelain War finds an unusual way into the subject matter by balancing the brutal footage of the front lines in war-torn Ukraine with the delicate artistry of Slava and Anya, the two main subjects the film follows. The doc was filmed by the non-filmmaking subjects themselves, with equipment smuggled into the country by the American director who then directed the film over contemporaneous Zoom sessions each day. Slava and Anya continue their pre-war life of creating intricately designed and fashioned porcelain sculptures, while Slava also works to train soldiers on the front lines of the war. It's a solid film about resorting to mankind's worst impulses to preserve our most human abilities. There's a really cute dog in it too. 3.5 stars. Up next, She Tap Danced, So Megan Could Do Whatever This Is, 1956's The Bad Seed, written by John Lee Mahin and directed by Mervyn LeRoy. I'm not quite sure how this snagged 3 acting Oscar noms, but this evil child melodrama is definitely entertaining. It's also the only film with the guts to end with a stilted curtain call of the cast calmly walking past a doorway and nodding to camera, and truly the only film with the brass balls to follow the curtain call, with one cast member bending another over their knee and frantically spanking them as the screen fades to black, so that the very last sound you hear is just hand smacking ass. 3.5 stars. Next up, an award season also ran Hard Truths, written and directed by Mike Leigh. Mike Leigh has never been a filmmaker I've particularly vibed with, but this one truly lost me. Too much of the first hour was underdeveloped and more than anything, repetitive without any new levels. Each scene felt like a shrill echo of the one before, with not much beyond the solid performances to cling to. I was pleased that this finally coalesced into something in the last half hour, but it was too little too late. Marianne Jean-Baptiste sure brought it in that last third though, but still, 2.5 stars. Next up, 2016's The Neon Demon, written by Nicholas Winding Refn, Mary Laws, and Polly Stenham, and directed by Nicholas Winding Refn. I don't think it's fair to write off this or some other Nicholas Winding Refn films as pure style over substance, because he definitely has some substance to his projects, especially 2011's Drive. But I would say that he drenches his films in cold, standoffish, stylized visuals to the point where it makes whatever substance lies within a pretty unsatisfying journey to find. That's especially true for The Neon Demon, when the substance behind the style is just the modeling world is cutthroat and predatory. Yeah, 2.5 stars. Then for some Katharine Hepburn, 1942's Woman of the Year, written by Ring Lardner Jr. and Michael Kanan, and directed by George Stevens. This was the first of 9 films that starred Katharine Hepburn and Spencer Tracy, and while I'd recommend others like Adam's Rib or Guess Who's Coming to Dinner before Woman of the Year, it's nice to see where the pair's on-screen and off-screen chemistry all started. The first half hour sets up a fairly interesting clash of Katharine as a worldly political affairs reporter and Spencer as a no-nonsense sports reporter that pays off somewhat in the middle of the film. The second half, though, gets progressively murkier in terms of its plot and messaging and somewhat fumbles the intriguing charm of the beginning. Still an alright ride by the end, so 3 stars. Then a surprising dud, 1997's Mimic, written by Guillermo del Toro and Matthew Robbins, and directed by Guillermo del Toro. For a film about massive bug monsters that disguise themselves as humans, Mimic is a massive monstrosity disguised as a film. It's a mess. And while Guillermo del Toro directed and co-wrote it, I'm not laying the blame mainly at his feet. Human turd Harvey Weinstein made the shooting and post-production process hell for del Toro and had control of the final cut of the film. In fact, James Cameron almost came to blows with Weinstein at the 1998 Oscars over how poorly he treated del Toro during the making of this, which in my opinion is true movie magic. Apparently there's a director's cut of the film floating around out there, but pretty sure I saw the god-awful theatrical cut. At least I hope that's what that was, so 1.5 stars. Up next, Oy vey, Maria, written by Stephen Knight and directed by Pablo Larraín. The first half hour had me wondering if this third Larraín biopic could be his strongest, but the elements and scene work I liked in the beginning fell away for much of the rest of the film. With a narrative that lacked much real meat to it and seemed happy lumbering towards the inevitable ending the film reveals in the opening flash forward, the great Angelina Jolie performance doesn't have much of anywhere to go, recycling scenes to fill an oddly long 2-hour runtime. Stellar cinematography and some nice editing though. 3 stars. Next, bear with me, it's 2005's Grizzly Man, written and directed by Werner Herzog. I'm not sure whether this documentary about self-proclaimed Grizzly Man Timothy Treadwell works because of the morbid undertones or in spite of them, but this was hard to turn away from pretty consistently. My personal sleep paralysis demon, Werner Herzog, takes footage shot by Treadwell in the several years before his death of him living among bears in Alaska and recontextualizes it as a debate over what is more dangerous, nature or mankind. There's some really touching footage amidst some of the more haunting footage that makes it a fascinating watch worth your time. 3.5 stars. Then, another newly Oscar-nominated doc, Box Diaries, directed by Shiori Ito. Shot contemporaneously in the aftermath of a prominent journalist's sexual assault and ensuing quest for legal and societal justice, Box Diaries is able to pull back the curtain of how intimately violating it is for assault victims to challenge the unjust status quo. This case was a major touchstone for the Me Too movement in Japan. It was really effective to see the bigger picture of that focus, coupled with the on-the-ground decisions director and subject Shiori Ito makes, from what she wears and says to how she plays the sprawling game of 4D chess she's been thrust into. 4 stars. Then, Aloha, it's 1953's From Here to Eternity, written by Daniel Teradash and directed by Fred Zinnemann. In a year where both Roman Holiday and Shane were nominated for Best Picture, I'm really not sure why this came out on top. Sure, it's got the infamous kissing on the beach as the waves crash around them scene, but other than that, it's a lot of crotchety characters killing time with sex until Pearl Harbor is attacked in the last 15 minutes. Fellow Best Picture winning Titanic found a much better balance between historical tragedy and burgeoning love story that From Here to Eternity really could have benefited from. It's not a bad film, but also not very remarkable. 3 stars. Up next, fascists who got their hair cut at a child's barber, it's The Order, written by Zach Balan and directed by Justin Kurzel. I didn't hear much buzz about this when it came out, but the little buzz I did hear was pretty good. The film is based on the real-life crime spree of a violent white supremacist group in the Pacific Northwest in the 1980s and the FBI's hunt to bring them down. I like the direction and pacing, and the two main performances from Nicholas Hoult and Jude Law balance each other nicely. Overall, a pretty decent watch. 3.5 stars. Then get ready for the coldest orgasm of your life. It's 1997's The Ice Storm, written by James Schamus and directed by Ang Lee. My fiance really didn't like this one, and I can kinda see why this slow trip back to the uptight era of suburban swingers and Watergate angst could be hard to connect with, but I really loved the world Ang Lee created here for its severity and incredibly flawed characters all bumping into each other in their quest for a way out of their claustrophobic lives. It honestly felt very akin to Paul Thomas Anderson's Magnolia with its intertwining storylines and repressed emotions. Magnolia pulls it off in a more engrossing, hard to look away from way, but The Ice Storm has a quiet charm to it if you give it a chance. 4 stars. Then a rare Cary Grant stinker, 1944's None But the Lonely Heart, written and directed by Clifford Odets. When 40-year-old Cary Grant bought the film rights to this novel so he could play the 19-year-old Cockney streetwave lead, why did no one sit him down and give him a pointed, "Oh, sweetie, no"? 2 stars. Then a Coen brothers first-time watch with 1994's The Hudsucker Proxy, written by Joel Coen, Ethan Coen, and Sam Raimi, and directed by Joel Coen. This is a great reminder that even the Coen brothers' more obscure films are still endlessly watchable and well-written. The script is one of their cartoonier ones, up there with Burn After Reading and Fargo, with broad characters and rapid-fire dialogue that's begging for multiple viewings so you can catch all the fast-flying bits and gags. It's so solid that I wished I liked it more, but those broader characters functioned more like archetypal shells that made it hard to feel much of what they were ostensibly feeling on screen. But huge shout out to that flabbergastingly good score from Carter Burwell. 3.5 stars. Then how about some more Canuck cinema, eh? 2007's My Winnipeg, written and directed by Guy Madden. I found this doc, it's not really a doc, enticingly soothing, like if Lake Wobegon and the Twilight Zone made a sensual and emotionally available sex tape directed by David Lynch. Bonus points for the sheer gusto of it all. 3.5 stars. Then, the American remake of Seven Samurai, 1960's The Magnificent Seven, written by William Roberts and directed by John Sturges. I thought it was very smart to take out that pesky tension building and all those nuanced character arcs that made Seven Samurai so garishly amazing. Just paper over what's left with pretty generic western antics and a scene-stealing villain in Eli Wallach, and boom, there's your movie. 2.5 stars. Then some angsty noir with 1948's They Live by Night, written by Charles Schnee and directed by Nicholas Ray. This starts off with a pretty groundbreaking helicopter tracking shot and continues to buck noir expectations here and there. For it being Nicholas Ray's directorial debut, it's impressively well oiled and visually forward. The plot got a bit bogged down in the second half for me, but I at least appreciate that things never got boring. 3.5 stars. And I finished the month off with 2009's Julie and Julia, written and directed by Nora Ephron. There's some nice blending of the two main storylines, and Meryl and Amy hold down their halves well, but this ends up being too safe. Wish Nora spiced things up a lot more. 2.5 stars. Let me know in the comments, what are your thoughts on these movies? Any others I should check out? Why does everybody look like they're about to bathroom? Also stay tuned for other great commentary videos, reviews, video essays, and more. You can check me out on Letterboxd at Cineramadome24 or on TikTok at Film in the Blank. I appreciate you liking and subscribing. See you next time.